it's in order for the servant to have both fear and hope. Allah says they hope for the mercy of God and they fear His punishment. So these two go together, fear and hope. The poet said, وَلَا بُدَّ مِن عَلَيْهِ خَوْفٍ مَعَ الرَّجَى. You have to have the two sandals of fear and hope. Some say it's the two wings, that you can't fly without the two of them, fear and hope. And then he says, فَإِنَّ مُوجِبَ الْخَوْفِ مَعْرِفَةُ سَطْوَةِ اللَّهِ, that khawf results from knowledge of Allah's divine power, that Allah can, the Lord of tsunamis. I mean, that's where fear comes from. Because God is merciful and compassionate, but God is also the Lord of orphans, the Lord of hurricanes, the Lord of all of these majestic things that occur in the world that are frightening and terrible. Allah is Dhul Jalali wal Ikram. He's the Lord of majesty. He seizes people. He can take you at any time. He can take your child. He can take your life and limb. He can take all your property. That is God also. It's not just, all the nice things that happen in life. No, Allah is both. He gives and He takes. And so it's an awareness of that power of God. And it's Dajjalic, those people that try to present God as everything's nice, everybody's going to heaven, it's all going to be wonderful. That's not reality. Reality is that there's people enslaved into prostitution. There's pedophiles that rape children. That's also part of the world. It's all these terrifying aspects of the world. And Allah lets those things happen. It's part of His sunnah in His creation, that He's the creator of good and evil. And we're not Manichaeans. We don't separate God into, there's good God and then there's this Ahriman, bad God. Or if God's all good, why does He allow evil? That's not a Muslim problem. It's never been a Muslim problem. We accept God the way God has revealed Himself to us, and we don't have those problems. فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. He does whatever He wants. أُلْقِي هَؤُلَاءِ فِي النَّارِ وَلَا أُبَالِي. I throw these into the fire and I have no concern. None whatsoever. No emotion. وَأُلْقِي هَؤُلَاءِ فِي الْجَنَّةِ وَلَا أُبَالِي. And I put these into paradise and I have no emotion. تَعَالَى اللَّهُ عَمَّا يَصِفُونَ. That's the transcendent God, and that God is real. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also an immanent God, involved in His creation, filled with mercy and benevolence, and that's the tajalli that we hope for. That's the manifestation of God that we desire in our lives. But both are God, and to reject one is to reject the other. Both are God. We don't separate. We're people of tawheed. We believe that God is one, but God has attributes. And those attributes are real. And that's what fear is. Fear is a recognition of that aspect of God that's terrifying, that can expel us from His mercy, can deprive us of all good, and it's tard al-bab, to be thrown away from the door. There's a wonderful scene in Candide, Voltaire's Candide. At the end, when he goes, Professor Pangloss. Who's the other character? Candide. Professor Pangloss and Candide. They're traveling around the world. Pangloss is trying to work out if this is the best of all possible worlds. He's a German metaphysician. And Candide is just trying to find out what's going on. Like, what's the world about? So they end up in Turkey. And they go to this Sufi Sheikh. He's going to give them all the answers to the world. And so they knock on the door, and this very austere Sufi Sheikh answers the door of the Zawiya. And he's, what do you want? And Dr. Pangloss is like, you have to explain to us, is this the best of all possible worlds? Why do people suffer in the world? Why is there suffering? And the Sufi looks at me and he says, what does the captain of the ship care about the rats in the hull? And then he slams the door. That's transcendence. That's an aspect of God, and that's what he was teaching. It's actually quite a brilliant insight. That was a lesson, because that is the nature of evil. There's an aspect of God that is so transcendent, so frightening, so terrifying, we can't comprehend it, we can't understand it, but it's God. And we accept it, we're in submission to it. we say Allahu Akbar. But then hope is engendered out of knowledge of His mercy. That He gives immense rewards. That we're healthy. We have so many blessings. We have water to drink. We have food to eat. We can go to sleep. When we drink, we can urinate. When we eat, we can defecate. We have spouses. We have children. We have houses. We have weather that is just right for human habitation. Our planet's protected. We have all of these amazing things. And then He gives us these incredible tools and gifts to do things. We have commerce from all around the world. And we have people that are doctors that work hard so they can heal our ills and treat us. We have pediatricians that have compassion for our children. We have mothers that respond in the middle of the night, even though they're exhausted, to the crying of their children, and hold them in their arms and rock them. We have people that are so outraged by the injustice of the world that they give up everything, their careers, their stature, to fight for the truth. People that will die. They'll literally go up against the gun because they know something's right, and they'll defend that right. We have people like that. The world's filled with that. And that's what Helen Keller said, the world's filled with suffering, but don't forget it's also filled with the overcoming of suffering. And that's what hope is about. And that's why they have to have this balance. You can't have one without the other. If you have one, you'll go crazy. You'll become the Richard Dawkins who rejects God and sees all the evil in the world and writes about how terrible religion is and all these things. Because all he sees is the evil of religion. When we come here, do we see the evil of Islam in this city? Really? Look at these people. Look at these amazing people. Look how they go to the prayer, getting up before dawn. There's people waiting to get into the Roda at 2:30 in the morning. They sit and wait for an hour just to go into the thing. And then they'll give you anything. People, really, they make room for you. Look how crowded it is. You know how people behave in large crowds? Look at just the adab of the people. This is the Islam that we see. It's charity. Look at all these people giving charity. Look at this hotel is a waqf for poor people, to help people. Somebody, the king made it a waqf. So we're staying here, we're eating this food, we're paying rent and all these things. That money that we're paying, a large portion of it is going to help people. That's from love of God. That's from religion. That's what we see. That's our experience of religion. So all of these things in the world that you see that are good, that's what gives us hope. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, tell my servants, I am the forgiving, I am the merciful. Tell my servants, He tells the Prophet, Nabbi ibadi, tell my servants, I am the merciful, I am the forgiving. But also remind them, my punishment is my chastisement is fierce, it's painful. They go together. Man arafa fadlallahi raja'u. If you know the bounty of Allah, you'll have nothing but hope. وَمَنْ عَرَفَ عَدْلَهُ خَفَى. But if you know the justice of God, you'll have fear. That's why you need to know the balance and the يَأْمُرُ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ. He commands to both justice and ihsan, and this bounty. So God commands to both. And there is an athar, a saying that's come down, if the fear and the hope of a believer was weighed, the scales would be balanced. That's the best state. And it's mustahab, and it's said, or rather, although it is better during the life of a person to have a little more fear, because that fear will protect him and keep him obedient and help him avoid disobedience or foul deeds and actions. But as he gets older and closer to death, he should have more hope. So when you're young and it's easier to be disobedient, it's better to have that fear as you get older. And then when you're almost dead, you should give up all fear. Don't be afraid of God. I mean, that's the sunnah, is that when you're on your deathbed, don't let anybody tell you about the fire. Have complete trust that God's merciful and the compassionate, and forget all of those warnings and all of those no, just have a good opinion of God. أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِي. I am in the opinion of my servant. So that's the sunnah, to do that. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, let not any one of you, which is in Sahih Muslim, let none of you have a bad opinion of God. Don't die with a bad opinion of God. Have a good opinion of God, that all His promises are true, that you're going to be in paradise with the prophets and the saints. And know that fear has 3 degrees. The first is when it's weak, it occurs to the heart, but it doesn't have an effect, neither inward or outward. And that's almost like not having any fear at all. So there's something, you're aware, astaghfirullah, but it's not stopping you. And the second is where it's stronger, it wakes you out of your heedlessness, and it compels you to be upright. And the third is so strong that it leads to despair. And you actually are convinced that God's singled you out. He's going to zap you with a bolt of lightning any minute. And that is incapacitating, and it's actually a religion. Is not a healthy state at all. Or in worst case scenario, psychosis. So he says, وَهَذَا لَا يَجُوزُ وَخَيْرُ الْأُمُورِ أَوْسَطُهَا. This one is not permissible. And the best of affairs is that middle one, where it prevents you from doing wrong and it compels you to do right. That's the best state of fear. وَالنَّاسُ فِي الْخَوْفِ عَلَى ثَلَاثِ مَقَامَاتٍ. And that people have 3 stations when it comes to fear. فَخَوْفُ الْعَامَّةِ مِنَ الذُّنُوبِ وخوف الخاصة من الخاتمة وخوف خاصة الخاصة من السابقة فإن الخاتمة مبنية عليها. So people are of 3 stations with fear. The first is the fear of the common people from wrong actions. The fear of the people of distinction from a bad end. They have a bad seal. And then the fear of the elect from amongst the people of distinction who actually fear the sabiqah. What was written in the wombs of their mothers when the angel was told about Shaqi or Sa'id. So that's the highest, because the khatima, your seal, is based on the sabiqah. How you end was based on your beginning. And that's why an-nihayat fil bidayat. The end is always in the beginning. If you see a student who's studying hard in the beginning, it's an indication that he's going to have an auspicious end in his education. If he starts out lazy, more likely than not, he's going to end up lazy. Not necessarily, but... And then he says, وَالرَّجَاءُ عَلَى ثَلَاثِ دَرَجَاتٍ. Hope is also on 3 degrees. The first, الأولى رجاء رحمة الله مع تسبب فيها بفعل طاعته وبترك معصيته فهذا هو الرجاء المحمود. الثانية الرجاء مع التفريط والعصيان فهذا غرور. والثالث أن يقوى الرجاء حتى يبلغ إلى الأمن فهذا حرام. So the first is where you hope for the mercy of God, and you're working also by doing good deeds, by being in a state of obedience, and by avoiding prohibitions. And this is a praiseworthy state of hope. The second is a hope that's excessive and becomes disobedient, and it's where you're deluded. God's merciful. Allah arhamar rahimin. Ya akhi, enjoy life. Don't worry. God's not going to do anything to you. He's not going to punish you. We're Muslims. Everything's fine. That's a delusional state that people are in. And the third one, أن يقوى الرجاء حتى يبلغ إلى الأمن, where they're just completely convinced. I've got a ticket to paradise and nothing's going to stop me. I've booked my suite in God's hotel, and it's luxury villa up at the top overlooking all the rivers. And he says that's haram, to feel so secure. And Abu Bakr, who's the example of fear and hope, Abu Bakr said, if one of my feet was in paradise and the other was out, I still wouldn't feel safe from the design of God. Not until both feet are firmly planted in paradise does he give up his... So that's important. وَالنَّاسُ فِي الرَّجَاءِ عَلَى ثَلَاثِ مَقَامَاتٍ. And people concerning hope are on 3 stations. فَمَقَامُ الْعَامَّةِ رجاء ثواب الله ومقام الخاصة رجاء رضوان الله ومقام خاصة الخاصة رجاء لقاء الله حبا فيه وشوقا إليه إن رحمة الله قريب من المحسنين وبالله التوفيق. So people concerning raja, this hope, have three stations. The first station is the general people, and it's a hope for God's reward. He's going to reward you. The second is the station of the elect. It's a hope for the pleasure of God. You want that God's pleased with you. More than you want anything from God, you want to give to God. That's a higher station, because it's love. And then the third is the elect from amongst the people of distinction, and that is hoping to meet God. You want to meet God. You're looking forward to meeting God. And we should all look forward to meeting God. Because this is going to be the director's commentary. You get to watch the whole thing and have it all explained to you. Allah says, I'm going to explain everything on that day. You're going to understand why you were all differing. Why is there all this confusion? Why do we have all these religions? Why do we have all these wars? Why? He's going to explain it all. Everybody goes, oh, that's what it meant. Yeah. Seriously, nobody has patience. It's too confusing. Well, my father told me he didn't understand Hamlet until he'd read it 50 times. There's people that work to understand things. And this assumption is it's all supposed to be clear and worked out. Why? It's only through work that you really appreciate things. So that's what we're preparing for. The day of judgment. And then that highest station, And then he says, Inna rahmatullahi qareebun min al-muhsinin. The mercy of God is close to the people of ihsan. And with God is tawfiq.